What does it mean when companies start spending $500 billion on AI infrastructure? Is this just the beginning or the start of an AI arms race? Welcome to this special edition of the XTraw AI podcast. I'm your host, Raghu Banda, and today we're decoding the biggest headlines that shaped the AI world in April 2025. With me are three fantastic guests, Manjeet, Lukas, and Sesh, and together we'll unpack the stories that are pushing the boundaries of AI innovation, integration, investment, and even ethics. From OpenAI's Stargate megaproject and Google's latest TPUs, to meta-stirring controversy with LLaMA 4 and new agent-based platforms like Gemini Agent Space, to legal teams doubling down on Gen AI and supply chain shakeups redefining global tech policy. This episode is structured into four key buckets. One, infrastructure and investments. Two, innovations and model launches. Three, industry applications and services. Four, ethics and global policy. We'll each bring our perspective. What's exciting, what's concerning, and what's just getting started. So let's kick things off with this. Which April headline made you realize this is no longer experimental? AI is now foundational.
Welcome back. And this is our monthly AI Digest from XTraw AI. So as we have been discussing, or as we have been doing in the past few months, today we are going to talk about what happened in the global AI news. And we have invited like three different guests: Lukas, NP Egger, Manjeet, and also Sesh Venkatraman. Welcome on board, Manjeet, Lukas, and Sesh.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So as always, I would like to first get started. Maybe I do this, Manjeet, I think we've been doing for the last 2 months. So today we got two more guests, and we wanted to kind of go into these different buckets, right? I think we have been discussing in four main categories: the AI infrastructure and investments that are happening across hardware, devices, data centers. Then we have been talking about, in the other bucket or other category, innovations and product launches. Then we have been talking about the ecosystems, partnerships. And then finally, we've also been talking about the ethics and policy discussions. So maybe this time I would want to start with you, Lukas. So what do you think is happening out there? I know there is a lot of news to even digest on a daily basis or on even a weekly basis. Any thoughts that you would like to bring in?
Especially about infrastructure, or generally speaking?
Maybe infrastructure, if you want to get started on that.
Sure. So just this week, there were a couple of debates whether the hyperscalers are pulling out in terms of their CapEx and where we will ultimately end up. And I was kind of surprised to see that people saw it as a sign of, oh, the market is cooling down because Microsoft is maybe reducing some of its leases for data centers, while we're still projected to be roundabout spending $350 billion in 2025 for capex for AI data centers. And to me, that's an impressive number, not just by the sheer size, because it's very hard to wrap your head around it, right? But also because if you try to frame it, I once worked with AI and said, like, hey, run me through a couple of expenditures in today's dollar value that might be like benchmark for making sense of that number. And I remember that the entire Manhattan project, right, for the first like build up to an atomic bomb, actually it was two different designs, was for the entire 4 or 5 years between 30 and 40 billion. Mm-hmm. So that is 10x fewer than what we're now spending in capex. So I still feel like one can be really bullish on infrastructure, meaning there is a lot going on, despite some high frequency noise about capex being reduced. It's still mind-boggling much money, and that surely will have second order ramifications down the line.
Right, right. Anything you would like to add, Manjeet, on the aspects of infrastructure and investments, or maybe generally, do you want to add something around what's happening out there in the AI world?
Yeah, so I agree with Lucas. I think except that one or two news where, like, let's say Microsoft won, all the other signals, like say if you think about the number of things that Google announced in their conference, and then after that they said, hey, Sundar said, hey, we will continue to invest more into building out more data centers, and then there's new TPU series, and then uh, I think it's continued to grow, and then. Another thing that you might see is more at the, I would say the international level, the ongoing tension between, let's say, US and China and for different regions. So I don't see any sign where any of the country has the, let's say, the opportunity to slow down at least for next 1 year. That's kind of my take. Because it's the speed, and then it's kind of race to, like, hey, can we become a kind of AI independence? In fact, China, right? When
Right.
I think, let's said, hey, no more DeepSeek R1. Next day, they came like, we will build out our own hardware using Huawei, our own chips, and I think things were already happening. But my thing is, it is going to accelerate even further. So that's kind of yeah, we cannot slow down. That's how I see it.
True. Sesh, would you like to add a few more thoughts on that topic about the infrastructure and investments, or do you want to talk
Yeah,
broadly about AI?
yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting development. It definitely reflects the growing importance of AI and the significant investment by the hyperscalers mostly. What's also good is that it's also bringing the otherwise competitors together, like the Oracle, Microsoft, Nvidia, and SoftBank. All of them are partnering to do the Stargate initiative. So as I think Lucas and Manjit were also pointing out, um, it's definitely good, generates a lot of jobs in the near term, but what's key is companies must quickly and effectively figure out a path to monetize their AI investments for the long-term sustainability. That'll be critical as models become more efficient, the initial capex kind of gets diluted very quickly, so they have to have a path to monetization very fast.
Beautiful. Any particular key highlights? Continuing further with you, Sesh, any particular key highlights that you want to talk about in the category of product launches or innovations that have happened in the past few weeks in the month of April? I know this is Q2, and generally Q2 starts with a lot more vigor and a lot more buzz.
Yeah, actually several interesting. The Google launches were very critical. From a hardware side, they launched their seventh generation Ironwood processor, which is like they say it's 5 times faster than their sixth generation and optimized for cloud scale, especially for AI computes. And pairing with that, their launch of the Gemini 2.5 Pro, which they claim as their thinking model that reasons through and then dynamically tailors has advanced coding capabilities, multimodal understanding, all of those. And then further pairing to that is their agent space announcement, where they are tying it all together nicely, where you can have invocable agents which can operate as truly autonomous solution providers in various verticals. And with their agent space, it's also interesting that they're already thinking through to their next monetizational direction, given that search results are not going to be their key money driver. They know that pairing agents and creating a space for agent, that becomes their new search result monetization model. So I like the way how they brought all of them together, the hardware, the model, as well as the ecosystem with that. It'll be interesting. I'm sure all other players will also come up with something similar, but it's what I like is the whole autonomous compute framework that is being developed. That was pretty interesting for me.
Beautiful, beautiful. I really like the aspect of bringing in all together, right? Any thoughts from you, Manjeet? I know you briefly mentioned about this in our last podcast conversation as well, when we were talking about some highlights about these agents, agent space and other things. Any thoughts that you would want to bring in about these new launches or innovations happening out there?
Yeah, no, oh my God, in agent space is totally blowing up. Let me give you two or three of my favorite from the last 1 month. So one is these kind of the voice capabilities are getting better every 2 weeks. And I was playing with this kind of small startup called Nari Labs. Their voice model, it's so much better. It's very empathetic. It's like it understands this tone. It handles the interruption so well. And then they showed the comparison with others, some of the competitors like LLaMAs and then Sesame, and then so it's I think the exciting and amazing to see is small startup of just few people are able to kind of pull this off at this kind of such a frontier level. Uh, then another one, which is even I saw it coming. So there's another startup called Clearly. They said, "Hey, we want to cheat on everything." And it was more of a, I think their way of going viral. But let me tell you the kind of the main story. So they are saying, "Hey, we have this basically, the AR glasses with AI and agents in it." And they showed the demo, like if you go on a date, you just wear it, and then how do you get the next date, for example? Or if you're a sales agent, you are talking to the customer, how do you, I think the real time aspect of it, right? So I think it's a step between now and Neuralink, right? Okay, we will implant the chip within our brain. So it's like, Raghu, you're wearing glasses. And because the latency has reduced so much, it's so instantaneous, and these kind of, so as the person is speaking, and then so now I think what are the ripple effect, right? What is the second degree, third degree? So people are using it to crack interviews. In fact, the founder is a 20-year-old guy. He shared the video like, hey, this is how I cracked the interview at Meta and then Amazon and a couple of other companies. But finally he was let go because it's like, hey, you cheated. But he took that as a manifesto that, hey, maybe it feels like cheating today, but tomorrow when everybody has these intelligence in all the, not just the phone, but let's say in glasses and all, like, what it mean? I think it's an interesting debate. There was a lot of, I think on Twitter, there was interesting take. People were like, for specifically for the interview, we probably need interview center, just like you go and do your GRE and GMAT test, where people will be like, oh, make sure you have nothing and you cannot take your phone, you cannot take is to kind of give a stamp of authority so that the person is not cheating, right? Specifically in the remote hiring. So that was, I think, pretty fascinating. I think it will happen in some way or form. Of course, we have to figure it out, how do we find the balance? Another quickly last one is in the agent is this notion of a full stack digital employee, digital labor. And of course, we are also trying to do it, let's say, as part of Agent Force. But there's like people are open sourcing it, right? The same kind of the Manus AI, and then that you give it a different role. Hey, this agent can do analysis. This agent can do market research. This can, write out the product requirement. You name it, jobs to be done, stitch it together, and then now that thing is available on GitHub. So I mean, we are in a crazy time.
Right. Beautiful. I think you nailed it, I think, very well. I was actually last week, I have this habit of going to some conferences over the weekend or get pulled into some conversations. I was at this rabbit hole conference that happened over the last week. And after the conference, there is this after event party. I thought it's like a normal party. But then I realized there were a lot of startup pitches, numerous number of pitches over 4 hours. It was really, really mind blowing for me. And then I was thinking, like, are we going back to those 2000 millennial days where there's so much of things happening? So over to you, Lukas. I know we had this conversation as well, I think, in the last week, and you were talking about, like, yeah, there are a lot of things happening out there, but to the to the to the common AI enthusiast, what would you recommend? Like, how do we go about this? Because there is so much of innovations going on out there, so many launches going on out there. What are your thoughts?
It's a very good question. Actually, what helps me the most is thinking about what would kind of change my perspective and being very rigorous, because it's very easy to be blown away by the hype machine, right? It is, as you said, companies understand that they need to go viral, and they very often, like, when there is so much upward mobility, there is strong incentives to be boastful, right? And especially when new stuff is coming out and we haven't fully understood it, I would say one very simple hack, so to speak, is to try and think about what would really surprise me,
Right.
or what would change my perspective, and do that exercise for yourself, and then see whether that actually ever manifests, right? Because we always have hindsight bias. Once you hear the news, it's kind of incorporated into the overall canvas of your beliefs, but doing it up front and saying, like, what are the things that should, like, surprise me? That is one of the things. And then the other thing that always really helps me is first principle, right? To go back to the type of analyses that go less into who does what, why, right, in terms of like the news, and more like what is the strategic angle. I think, with a hammer in your hand, the world is nails and not nails. And I kind of like AI, and I do like strategy. But there is a concept, for instance, when we talked, or you guys talked about, that a lot of stuff gets open sourced. Like, one of the ideas that can help you lead an analysis is that if there's a stable pattern in the world, there's always someone who benefits. Okay. So, all right. So what is really then going on? And you could say, well, most of the time when big companies or any company commoditizes something, what happens is the price drops, right? So what you would want to commoditize is your complement, right? If I'm Meta and I have trust because I am the arbiter of real connections between people that cannot be synthesized, right? Then the commodity on the other side that I want to make sure that nobody else can monetize is intelligence, right? Because if intelligence is cheap, trust is expensive.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, what kind of surprises me is the one part, and the other thing is the first principle thinking, where I'm like, those very principled analysis where I don't look at any one company in particular, but rather what are the motivations, the stable patterns that arise. And there's always an incentive, right? Show me the incentive structure and I tell you what kind of company you have, or whatever the adage is. So that's how I try to make sense. And I think if you look through that lens, then there is a couple of really interesting things going on. And I don't want to ramble on for too long, but you guys just talked about Search and Gemini, essentially, right? Search is a $200 billion per annum market. Gemini is the biggest investment, and arguably with the newest release, they're in the top spot of all the AI models. Yet AI arguably is the disintermediation technology of search. So I find it wildly fascinating how this will play out, because I can't remember any case where an incumbent to one of the biggest money volcanoes that humanity has ever seen, at the same time, is in the first spot of disintermediating, disrupting its own business. And that kind of will be a show, right? No matter what happens. And then the other part, we talked about monetization, and with agents, we haven't yet figured out like what to do. On the one hand side, we're pushing the narrative of, hey, AI is a bicycle for your mind. You can do more. You get empowered as a user. And at the same time, we're pushing the narrative of it will displace jobs. So if you're pushing the bicycle for the mind, you have to sell a subscription, and hey, you could be smarter at $9.99 per month. If you're displacing someone, you're not going to the person. you're not selling me on getting rid of my job, right? You're going to the executive and telling him, hey, you need 10 fewer Lucases in your organization, and the mean average salary is X, and I'm giving you a quote for 20% of that. I'm doing all of their work. And those two incentive structure will never chime. They will never work with each other.
Right.
Sorry, it's just a lot of interesting stuff. And what's so fascinating is that we don't yet know how it will shake out, because there's multiple versions of where this could go. And it's very path dependent on a lot of things that are hard to predict.
Right, right. I think you've very well said about that. A lot of things are happening in this agent space, and how all these things can really tie in together. Getting into this, staying on the topic of that, but I would like to want to go a bit into the ecosystem and the partnerships that are happening out there. What are your thoughts, Lukas, about whether we talk about AI integrations or services or the partnerships that are happening out there? I know Intel and TSMC have agreed to form a chip making joint venture, or maybe there are a few other things going on out there. So what are your thoughts, or any insights into that in the past 1 month that you've seen?
Sure. I would say whenever it's about the real world versus the digital world, it's kind of one should differentiate, right? Because the digital world, because of zero marginal costs, behaves very differently. So anything where you want to build a fab or you want to invest into the production of real chips will have different timescales, different implications compared to what's working in the digital space. Again, what kind of helps me is less the announcement of intention, but the delivery of first results. So, for instance, there is one of the, I would say, most interesting partnerships out there is currently, we see that coding works very well, right? Whether it's Cursor or other companies, and they work with Anthropic and other models, and there is yet to be defined who works with whom, right? And you could say hey, this is fantastic news, and we have iterative feedback loops that work very well. But let's not listen to the hype. Listen to when, for instance, Cursor this week said that they're delivering more than 1 billion lines of code per day that are accepted, right? That by a human were accepted. Those to me are the real tangibles of the real artifacts of how the market moves on. And so I'm trying to look for the interesting tidbits of information that are not intentions and aspirations, but show a creation of value, because ultimately we're still figuring out where the biggest value creation opportunities are.
Right, right. Very well said. Over to you, Sesh. Any thoughts about what's happening out there in the ecosystem space or the partnership space that you would like to add?
Yeah, I think given Intel shareholder as well, I'm pretty excited that Intel and TSMC are forming a partnership. That definitely is a good move to diversify the chip making process. And what's also interesting from a partnership standpoint was the OpenAI Stargate project, which actually brought together several companies together, and I'm hopeful that the outcome is that we revolutionize industries in every sector and unlock the full potential of it. As they say, the initiative is aiming to become a factory of factory for the AI models. So to tie into Lucas's points, it probably will throw up new problems at the end of the first problem solving, right? So it's an interesting proposition that they are talking about. And hopefully at the end of it, the US maintains a leadership, and there's enough national security as well bound into it. So those are, I think, some couple of things from a partnership standpoint I can think of. And I mean, tying back to the whole Google announcement as well, the whole Google announcement of what they call the agent-to-agent model is also a facilitator, so to say, like a marketplace of autonomous agents that can collaborate and create a solve for problems. We all talked about the Manus. as one of the things last month. But then this creates a new open playground for agents to be kind of published and then collaborate and then solve autonomous problem. That also kind of ties into the partnership that comes with it if it becomes a marketplace. So I think those are the three things I would say this month from a partnership standpoint.
Beautiful. I think, Sesh, I like the aspect of tying that all together. Over to you, Manjeet. Do you want to provide some thoughts from your perspective about all these integrations and partnerships happening out there? And also, you briefly mentioned about US, India, and US and China,
Right.
the trade war happening out there as well. Of course, before we get into the category 4.
Yeah, sure. So a couple of observations, right? So I think a little bit picking on what Lucas was saying was, hey, the AI is disintermediary force. Okay. So as a result of this, I'm seeing kind of two things. So one is the traditional definition and notion of competition is blurring out. And what I mean by that is it becoming more of a competition, right? So the traditional competitors that we had, there's like, okay, we have no choice. For example, if Google build A to A, we cannot just like, we have to, figure out and integrate with it. Or MCP is a great example, right? Anthropic built MCP. OpenAI had their own version. MCP really took off. And now OpenAI and everybody has like, okay, let's, because you cannot fight the network effect. If something has already been let's say resonating and solving kind of a part of the puzzle, I don't think we have a choice because things move very fast. It's just like social media. This AI sometime is like in some cases getting these hundreds of the millions of user in within 24 hours, right? And then it's seeing the kind of excitement. The second thing is I do expect there will be a lot of consolidation, right? So you were mentioning Cursor, right? So I think OpenAI trying to acquire Windsurf is one example because this whole AI agentic software development space is blowing up. Um, I think that's really to me the cross the chasm in terms of the value. If anybody question like, oh, I'm not getting enough value in software development, I can challenge that you don't know how to use it or you don't have the right tool because these tools are fantastic for design and development and test and then right you name it the full life cycle. So my prediction is I was reading some data. So there is 87,000 startup in this space right now. Okay.
Wow.
Um, all the small ones. And so in fact, yeah, I shouldn't kind of joke about it, but I think the truth is many of the recent college grad looks like they have two options. Either go and create your own startup because job market is very tight or probably yes you have to drive Uber or something. It's I mean that's basically kind of the situation um, in some of the I would say the top tier college where students are not able to find job for 6 months and 9 months. That never happened.
Right.
Companies were waiting for them to hire right off the first day and give them the joining bonus and all that. So I think things are changing quite and we all have to figure it out. We have to adapt to it and then see, right? How do we build out the relevant skills and then, or maybe go and build out your own startup and kind of, why even, work for a company. But I do see a lot of this consolidation will happen because if there is 87,000 startup, I don't think we have that many buyers for these agents and then these and right. So, and Lucas was also saying, hey, if there is a, seven Lucas versus five now, there's a less license requirement. So who do you sell it to? So I think there'll be a lot of the consolidations in the next few years, and then I think these frontier lab models and companies will no doubt will do well because they have deep pockets and they have this kind of the control the even if there's open source they do control a lot of distributions and then the best models and experience. I think they will have a little bit of an upper hand.
True. I think very well said. I think a lot of consolidation is going to happen. A lot of this is where I think the ecosystem of AI and the partnerships will be growing abundantly. This will take me to the final category about talking about the global trade and the policies, right? I think how is it I know we've seen a lot this April, I think starting April 1st or April 2nd. Over to you, Manjeet. I think staying with you. What are your thoughts? How is it going to affect? Again, these are like as we go each day and each week, we are seeing a lot more things happening. How do you think it is going to impact the whether it is the Nvidias of the world or whether the GCPs of the world?
Yeah, so one is I think there's a bit of tension between countries, and then I'm not kind of subject matter expert in that area, but let me touch on two other kind of relevant point here. So I think one is that as these models are getting more and more smarter, right? If you play with O3 type reasoning model, and then this idea of like, hey, trust is a new, is a new moat. What Lukas, you were also saying, right? So I think what's this concept around like AI interpretability, and that's where Anthropic CEO, he wrote a very, very nice paper. I highly recommend everybody to read it. How do we make AI more interpretable? Because we can say, oh, these are non-deterministic system, and then maybe you try 5 times, or we can say put guardrails, and then. But I think that the more and more these models have this agentic behavior, they can start to form an opinion. If you give them a goal today, right? If you go to the full model, it's by default. It's less, and that's where it's like I was surprised. The same prompt I give it to this new model starts to form an opinion and try to take action, go web research and all that. It's not just a token prediction. It is actually going and starting to making sense out of kind of the world around using informations and not just what's in the training data. So I think that's where this, I think they're building the trust and explaining why these things are kind of working the way it is working, build out those more guardrails, more control. So I think that paper is a fantastic read, I would say, because that will help define. And I know there's a lot of conversation ongoing. OpenAI has their own proposal, how they think about, putting some policies and making proposal to governments. There are a few other leaders in this space. At the same time, this country level, I'm still looking into all this kind of the basic ones, of course, GDPR and HIPAA and all the others.
Right.
But I think how it will kind of play out and impact. I know it's a long-worded answer, but to me that's where it matters to me, the work I do, and then the customer kind of the I work with. It's like, okay, data where it is, how do we secure it? How do we explain so that we all feel comfortable and confident in using this system in a production environment?
I kind of want to chime in just for 1 second.
Sure.
Because I kind of want to be deeply respectful. I do want to be a slightly contrarian, because I do think that this entire debate about explainability of AI, it reminds me of something that happened in the beginning of the 20th century when they had their first elevators, right? They had people working elevators. And what I didn't realize for the longest time, even back then, the technology was available to just push a button, right? Or have like some sort of lever operating the elevator. They did it because they wanted for people to have a better onboarding experience to a new technology, so they would feel more comfortable. And essentially having an operator in the elevator would signal, hey, this is a safe environment, you can come in. And it was luxurious and new and innovative, right? Now nobody cares, right? Most elevators these days in the new buildings don't even let you push buttons. You say once where you go, and it tells you where you have to go, right? And I would say that it is necessary maybe to signal that the labs are really working on it, to give like this trust and the confidence in the technology, just like the lift boy. But if you give me an AI that does everything I want and is aligned within the guardrails of compliance and all the things that need to happen for value creation, and I cannot explain a single bit of his behavior, but it still every time succeeds, I couldn't care less about it, right? So I think ultimately we're doing this because it's necessary for the feel-good factor. but what will prevail is the economic value, and the economic value doesn't care if you have fail safes and good enough behavior. But it's maybe not so much of a contrarian piece. I kind of want to push people to think whether they would get into an AI elevator in that sense, right? If I'm running with this analogy, and I think most people would if it gives you money.
That's a great way of putting it, Lukas. I think I like the analogy that you put. I still remember those days of those old movies, I think, where you could see an elevator, a person who's needed to get into the elevator. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
But I think the elevator example is so simple. To me, is I think the thing we are talking about in here is autonomous employee. For example, in my role as a product person, I have to do customer research. I have to decide what to build. I have to decide if it's right or not, what the experience is. So I think the part people, a little bit of people are referring in here is if this is where we are going to autonomous employee, then I mean, it's a very, I think the complexity increase. But I think that I'll use Lucas, your example. I think this is, explaining people this, I think there's a simple workflows and there's complex workflow. How much you trust the autonomy when you go at this kind of the simple to medium to high complex to very high complex.
right.
I think that,
Sesh, you want to
yeah,
chime
just
in?
to chime into the same sentiment as Manjeet was saying. It in the weekend I was watching a Y Combinator a presentation slash demo where he was creating an X by using a combination of you probably
Right.
saw that, Manjeet, right? He used Perplexity to
Right.
tell that to write the PRD, and then took the PRD and then fed it into Cursor. We generated the code and then finished. So basically, at the end of 30 minutes, I'm sure there would have been a lot of editing in between them. But even if you say 1 hour, at the end of 1 hour, he had a product from thought to something working solution, right? So that's where it's going, I guess. On that note, I guess we have to all think about what are we going to do with our free time. Maybe we should ask AI that.
Right. Right.
I
Yeah.
think that gets us to the final round. I think I would call this a rapid fire round, maybe one sentence from each of you guests. I think we'll start with Sesh or continue with Sesh. What excites you or what concerns you the most after what's happening currently in April 2025?
Well, it's pretty incredible acceleration in AI capabilities, right? In such a short time frame, Google Pro 2.4 was released, LLaMA release, and coupled with agent collaboration, we are moving to this truly autonomous problem solving and personalized proactive assistance at scale. So that's very interesting, right? The implications for productivity, innovation, even in our daily life, is profound. And like I said, the downer would be we'll have to think about what we do in our free time, and maybe we need to use AI to find us that answer ourselves.
Beautiful. Over to you, Lucas. I think any closing statement from your end about how is the future looking, and what is your advice, maybe?
Wow, that's way too much of a question to answer in one paragraph,
I know.
or I'm not good at it. But one thing I'm excited about, one thing I'm slightly frightened about is, or maybe to give it a positive spin that can be something bigger. I'm kind of excited about non-sycophantic AI, right? An AI that is maybe a little bit cantankerous, that says like, well, that wasn't really smart. Let's try it again or something. I think it would be fun. Most people in the beginning might disagree, but I believe that an AI that pushes back might be the better teacher over longer periods of time. So in order to not get stuck in a local maximum, I would hope that this is going the right way. And then the thing that maybe is underestimated, or where I feel like there could be a lot of dystopian but also amazing things coming out of, quite unannounced to the world. I feel like visual understanding of AI has leapfrogged, right, with the newest releases. And now they're close to human benchmarks. So if you give him like if you give the AI a random image and say, like, describe what's happening, why is a person interacting, what is a plausible explanation or a sequence of events, they're doing really well these days. And so you can either go Black Mirror with your imagination or totally entirely positive. But I expect that there will be tons of exciting things coming out of that corner, which are currently not on our radar simply because we're very focused on the AI that has been turning our lives upside down for the last 3 years on a textual prompt kind of basis.
Beautiful. Amazing piece of advice. And over to you, Manjeet. As always, could you also not only providing your concerns, but also maybe end with a fitness tip as well, as usual for our audience?
Yeah. No, and Lucas, that was a very good advice. I think what I'm excited about, it's a little bit of a moving goal, but I would say as of right now, how to think with AI. So I've been, it's a little bit of, it's just like the persuasive prompting to more of like asking AI in more of a in a configurable way. Hey, this is what I want to do, why I want to do, and use it as a your second brain partner. Um, as I'm using more and more, I get excited, but I'm also a bit of worried that am I outsourcing my thinking more and more, and what it means in a long horizon.
Right.
Will I be able to function with the same, capacity and productivity? And if this tool is taken away from me 6 months from now, so I think trying to be more conscious, and then the one thing that I always kind of do is anything before I brainstorm with AI, I brainstorm on a paper. This is like, okay, this is my, and that honestly really helps me not like type everything in AI, right? For example, says to your question is like, hey, when we have too much of free time, what will we do? Will we watch Netflix and then get fat or eat junk food and then, hope AI will make us work out, right? But I think the important the thing that for all of us in here is that any technology has a kind of double-edged sword, and then we need to all incrementally figure it out what's the right balance of kind of I'm spending too much time. I think now I'm like, okay, I need to a little bit scale it down. So okay, I think fitness tips. Maybe can start there. So what I'll do a quick observation. I did a kind of a offsite with the team, and then I asked for a quick raise of hand. It's like, hey, which body part hurts you? And as you know, we all techie, we spend a lot of time and sitting on hunched on a laptop, and then the top three things that were highlighted, either a little bit of stiffness in the neck, or on the kind of your you use a lot of mouse, kind of carpal tunnel, and of course the back kind of the lower back pain is in there. And my advice in here is that one is, of course, a little bit of move, and then to me that is less actionable. But the way that I undo the damage, kind of at the end of the day or during throughout the day, is I keep switching the spot. Sometimes, when in my room I have standing desk. I also have a balancing board. Sometimes I stand on that. Walking meeting, and I would say pick thing one region. Even if drink a lot of water, you have to go to the bathroom, and that's the reason for you to stand up and then do, right? Just as an example. But that's my take. I advise people like, okay, that you do a lot of damage, your body is very forgiving. But if you take 5 minutes a day to undo, stretch, relax, breathe, whatever, that's what all you need.
Thank you. That's some great piece of advice as well, Manjeet. And thanks you all. It's an amazing conversation that we had this time with all the three of you.
Yeah, Raghu, this was a blast, and then hopefully we should continue to do more, and and maybe exchange our notes on some of the things we are observing and prediction we are making. It's hard to predict future. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
And that's a wrap on our April 2025 AI Digest, packed with billion-dollar breakthroughs, bold new models, and some big questions about where we're all headed. A huge thanks to my guests, Manjeet, Lukas, and Sesh, for bringing the heat, the insight, and the humor. To our audience, thanks as always for tuning in. Whether you're building with AI, navigating the shifts in your industry, or just curious about what's next, we're glad you're on this journey with us. If this month's news taught us anything, it's that AI is no longer a tool. It's becoming the foundation. But the way we invest, innovate, integrate, and regulate it, that's what will define the next decade. Until next time, happy predicting the future with AI technologies. And as always, stay XTraw.